Welcome to Film Study, an all-American podcast with Lexi. I'm Lexi. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share, rate the podcast 5 stars, all of that good stuff. Today we're talking about All-American Homecoming, episode 211, I can tell. And I got Noko on the pod. I love it. So yeah, hope that you enjoy it. Here it is. Let me say this. Number one, I was reeling from the death of Billy Baker when I was watching this episode.
So you know, hold up, what?
I love that this is your really authentic reaction because you did not know. We talked about it before. I'm not spoiling to spoil.
Yeah.
But yes, Billy Baker died.
No, he didn't.
I'm not joking.
There's no way.
He's kidding you.
He's like 75% of the show, I feel like.
He died.
I need to know how. You're
All-American.
lying. And so I was laughing because I laugh when I get anxious. I'm mad.
No, me too.
Laughing is like my go-to. Hence why it took me a minute to actually then respond.
I was laughing all on my podcast that I recorded yesterday.
You're not serious.
I'm very serious. But we'll talk more about it when we
get. We'll have to talk about that. Oh my god. Wow, I'm so shocked. Okay.
It was crazy. But to that point, I had to wait. I watched Homecoming yesterday, and I actually took a good deal of it in, but I had to I usually do rewatch it anyway before recording, and I definitely had to rewatch it again.
Wow.
Today after that yesterday. So anyway, Homecoming. What were your overall thoughts on the episode?
Well, so my overall thoughts was, what kind of episode the day before Valentine's Day?
Oh my gosh, that too. That's what I'm upset. Look, people were upset because they were just like, not you killing Billy and then giving us this Homecoming episode right after all in the day before Valentine's Day.
Yeah,
the writers
where's the love? So that was my first overall and thought process. The ending just pissed me off. I was just okay, are we doing this again? Why are we back? I feel like at season 1, but overall, it kept me engaged because I really want to know about what's going on with this whole Simone and Damon thing. So that's how they get you. Yeah, that's how they get you.
And here's the funny thing is that we're friends offline. We're friends outside of All American. So it was so funny because you had just asked me my thoughts. And you were like, what do you think of Simone and Lando? And da-da-da-da. And I was just like, look, they gonna come back to her and Damon. And I feel like it's going to be soon. And then bam, the next episode, they kissed.
I was like, so listen, I literally was like, did I speak this up? I really
did.
I did not speak this up.
You did.
Oh, it's been so...
But if you could rate it out of 10, what rating would you give it? I feel like I would wait for yours and then I'll say mine.
A lot of things piss me off in the episode, so I would probably give it a 6.5, 7.
I love that you're so real.
What would you give it?
I was literally gonna say 7, and I was thinking in my head, I'm like, that's a little generous because of all of the things I didn't like. So I'm with you on the 6.5. I'm with you on the 6.5.
Okay.
6.5 to 7. 6.5 to 7, depending. Some people may be excited about some of the things that happen. But yeah, getting into the episode. Let's start with Cam. You know what? I have said this ad nauseum, but it's rest assured now is that you can't have Nate and Keisha in an episode together is what I'm figuring out. They're only gonna allow it for maybe the mid-season, and not even that because Nate wasn't there during the mid-season. So they're only gonna have it during major episodes where they're together in an episode, and that has been something in season 2 that I've just been very confused about.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Because they have one of the strongest relationships on the show. So it was just very interesting that it's, it feels like that's going to be a trend line because they only have like 3-4 more episodes left.
I think so. Yeah.
So yeah, it's we gonna see. But anyway, Cam, I was excited about this. Did not have a storyline with Keisha, is what I was gonna say. And it was all about his line brothers missing rehearsals and dragging, and JR's upset. Ends up telling JR, like, you gotta treat me like everybody else. And I keep forgetting this guy's name. Who's like with JR.
Oh, the backup guy?
Yeah, in KK.
Yeah.
But he basically is holding a separate line, and I assume that means that he is giving some of the line different responsibilities, excluding Cam. I didn't know if it was just Cam or every other guys as well, but excluding Cam from the line, having them do other things. JR finds out, gets really upset, and ends up kicking everybody off the team, but then Cam stands up for him. So the line is saved, but the dude is kicked off the team by JR. So what did you think of that whole storyline?
Okay, so this is like one of the storylines that is like, okay, what is going on? Like, I know what the writers are trying to do and tell the story of kind of what it's like to be on a Fred and those types of things, but it's the over dramatic of JR that
what
that literally I don't understand that he should understand. That's the part that kind of gets to me every time. Like, JR, okay, you're showing Cam favoritism because he's your friend. It's the same reason why they tried to say that the dinner at Amira's house couldn't happen, right? And so the line doesn't like it. Your little, I don't know what they call, I'm not in a sorority, so, but the guy that you're talking about who had been hosting the other line, right? He already feels like he can't trust Cam now because Cam basically was getting special treatment. It came back that they were injured. And so now he had to adjust the way he does it. I know for a split second, I thought that Cam and JR planned that little scene to get Cam back on the same page with the line. Like, oh, because, they really didn't finish their conversation. They kind of just cut it off. Like, oh, well, who said it? And then boom, the scene ended. And then a couple scenes later, they show you.
I was really confused because I was just wondering, like, what I don't know what I'm trying to say here, but like, what happened? Like, I know that they were having a separate line, but how did JR find that out? Right. How, like, what is this separate line that they were having? Why was it injuring players? Like, was this regarding JR trying to make the line more better, right? They had that whole conversation with Gabby a couple episodes ago about not being too tough, not breaking them down, right? So was this the other guy breaking them down? Like, that's one, if I could have one critique about Homecoming, that would be is that it's just like they just cut these scenes that are crucial, right? Like, I get annoyed when scenes are cut on All American, and you know what I mean? But generally, I feel like you could get the story. Like, you could get the story. Yeah. But Homecoming just cuts crucial scenes, and I'm so confused about. And this is going all the way back to season 1, beginning of season 1, when it's just like, okay, we had this whole storyline about Simone being in the dorms, and suddenly in an episode, everything's fine. Like, she's back in the dorms, and there was no explanation whatsoever. And it's just like, and it's like, you can suspend your disbelief. I'm fine with that. I'm cool with that. But it's just like things like this, to your point, where it seems like this is all dramatic and sort of no payoff because we don't get the full weight of that story.
Exactly. And I think that's like one of those scenes that why it was a 6.5 for me. Yeah, I just was like, what's going on? It's like it was too much guessing for me. Like, I'm trying to I don't know. Okay.
You know what? And I love that you said too much guessing because my friend Kai would make fun of me for this transition I'm about to do. But too much. You know who we don't need to guess about? Who? Marcus and Amara. Marcus and Amara. here. I want to go home.
Oh, see, and this is what's so funny about them. Okay, so I just want to throw this out here. One thing that I don't like is that right after Zeke,
Keisha.
yeah, Keisha kind of addressed her about her dad and so forth. They kind of like then go right into Mark. Like, it's like, why can't anybody just be in a happy relationship, please?
Oh, All American Universe does not do happy relationships like that.
Because for a split second, I was like, okay, because actually I'm probably one of the very few. I like Amara and Marcus, and that's just me.
Don't even.
That's just me. But I don't like
kick you off this podcast right now.
I don't like this idea that, like, when kids get involved, like, I know Keisha's not a kid, but she's still his child. And it's hard now for me to even root for you guys because now she knows, and I can't. It's so hard. But I did like them.
But I am infamous for, like, never having liked them from the beginning. Didn't see it. Didn't feel the chemistry. Nothing. Like, but yeah, ad nauseum have talked about this. I'm gonna be fair to their story for a second. Keisha, and they've just got her involved in the episode before and now going straight back into Marcus and Amara. It's also like this was sort of underrated and I didn't really catch it the first time I watched it, but Marcus could be having a manic episode? Question mark?
I don't know.
And so he's doing all of these things, saying all these things to Amara. Meanwhile, he could be having a manic episode. And so he's sort of making these grand gestures because that could be the case. And now Amara, I think what I really struggle with is like how Amara is taking all of this. So it's just like, are you into Zeke at all? Because if that's not the case, like if we recall earlier in the season, like she's the one who wanted to push their relationship forward. Yeah.
That's why
it's like, is that gone now? I'm confused. Like, I know she said that she wasn't playing any games, but I mean, after that, it seemed if they've still been talking, that was the other thing is that we assumed that they had dropped the storyline because she said like,
yes,
I'm not playing any games, and so we were like, okay, they're done. Only to come find out last episode they still been talking, I guess. And she's like, oh, we've been talking for months. And so I'm like, so you still were dating him, I guess.
Exactly.
But now you're like in love with Marcus, even though you told Marcus, this was closure. Like all of the stuff that happened in season 1 with him.
Yes. Like, and I think that's the thing for me. And that's why it was easy to be like, oh, okay, what's going on with Marcus now? Because it just like got quiet for a long time. It was just like, okay, well, I guess they're not talking anymore. Like, they're not really, that was the closure of that, right? And so I was like, oh, so Marcus is back. Which, by the way, people, I want to say I really think is unhealthy, right? That back and forth type of thing they keep doing that it seems like they've been doing since they were in college. Since they were in college. But I do want to say that I do think some of that then plays to his mental health that she's then not responsible for though either. So it's so hard for me to like, I just don't know. Her and Zeke always seemed so weird for me because it came out of anywhere. Like I was like, what?
See, I peeped it. They had the tension. They had the tension. Yeah. I peeped
never
it in
did.
Season 1.
I never did. I said this is the weirdest couple I've ever seen.
No, I loved it. But the thing is, at this point, it's not even about Zeke for me because I feel like, again, even though I'm a Zeke and Amara shipper, when this came back up last week, in last week's episode, I was just like, I really thought that they had abandoned the whole thing. They were just like, oh, ha, ha, ha. We're like dangling the carrot or whatever in front of your face. And then we took it away. And I was just like, I was fine with them taking it away. But then to like put this back in our face to immediately say Marcus is deciding to tell her he loves her again, it was just weird. Like,
and
strange. And then for her friend, who was funny, right?
Her
what
friend
did she
is
say?
hilarious.
I gotta show these young hoes how we do it. It's very funny. But her friends saying like Marcus is the risky choice, which sure, but Marcus is very safe. Like, I don't think of Marcus as risky. Like, sure, he has his mental health stuff, but I wouldn't
Yeah.
like describe that as risky. I think he's a very safe choice.
Me too.
If anything, he is the safest choice. I don't
Choice.
think Zeke is a safe
Yeah.
choice. But
Yeah.
they try to paint him that way, and I'm like, I'm just not picking up what y'all are putting down with the story.
Yeah, I definitely now Lexi, I will agree with that like wholeheartedly. Like he is definitely the safest choice. Hence why she feels more comfortable going back to him, right? And so yeah.
Preach.
You're absolutely right. I just don't know what they're doing. They just don't want to
don't.
see them happy. Any couple. They want them all to just I don't know.
Any, yeah. Any couple. But so that was that. Marcus ends up saying that he's gonna fight for her, and she says that she wants them. Which, if you ship, I am friends with many a folk who ship Marcus and Amara. Congratulations to you. Congratulations to you.
Yeah, that was the only. I don't know. It's still weird because she's still with Zeke, so it wasn't like I could just be happy.
And it's like,
for
is
them.
she gonna break up with him now?
Yeah.
Like, I don't like. I don't know.
Yeah.
I would love to see her keep playing them both, so we get just.
I would
being
not.
serious.
I would not.
No. To get Amara doing something that's not Saint Amara for once.
Well, yeah, that too. But how so I feel bad then, like I mentioned earlier, and I know she's not a kid, but Keisha in the mix of
for
all
sure,
of
for
that,
sure.
she's clearly still
agree.
dealing with like whatever trauma
mom's-
losing her
Which is,
mom.
like,
Yeah.
why would you introduce that?
And so, like, to do that and then have the friends involved, oh my goodness. It was
But
just,
isn't that perfect for Amara though? Like, I just like, because everybody looks up to her and everybody,
Oh, yeah.
it's just like, you're the best thing since sliced bread, and you're
well, they're
the
also
saint.
bad.
You
at,
always do the right thing.
Yeah, but all of them are actually really bad at treating each other like they're human. So if she was to do that, I think that they put her on such a high pedestal that they would not be able to say,
It would come crashing.
Yes.
It would come crashing. No, and I think we need to see that. I don't know. I just think Amara, and I don't want to use the word humbled because I don't think that's what she needs. But to your point, I think that she needs to come off the pedestal. Like she, again, in this entire universe of characters, I'd say she's probably the best, right? She always has everybody's best intentions at heart. We've never even heard her sniff a scandal. And the one scandal she did sniff was just that people were coming for her because she was trying to do a good thing when she was young. Like, no, come on.
Right.
Come on. We don't want perfect characters, and not to say she's perfect, but you know what I mean? She's pretty close to perfect.
Right.
She's pretty close to perfect. So just something, maybe not, juggling the two guys at the same time, but something to get her off the pedestal and just like make her a little bit more flawed, just a little bit more flawed.
Right. We'll
Whew.
see. We'll see.
We will. Someone who is very flawed, Melinda.
Okay, yes. Let me hear what you have to say first. Let's talk about her in this campaign and
Yeah, so her and Nate end up having a campaign event at the same time, and number one, I gotta get this out of the way. How did Simone hear their whole conversation coming out of the elevator? I don't know. It was a little too fast for me. She literally came straight. We heard the elevator ding, and she was like, "Why don't you guys both have why don't you both have the campaign event here?" And it was like, how did you hear that? I don't think you could get that whole conversation from that 2 seconds that you stepped out of the elevator. But essentially, they're both running for president, and having their campaign events simultaneously after listening to Simone's advice. Lion's Den, which is the Christian group on campus, is also in attendance, the Lion's Den president. And, Nate and Melinda end up finding out that they are both people of faith. And, Melinda is Melinda, right? And she's talking some mess about hypocrites and blah, 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 blah. And it's here's my problem with people like Melinda. And I know a few of them. And I think it's like, this is something that is prevalent in Black churches. It's just
I was
like,
going to say, you can say it.
I know.
If you weren't, I was, but
No, it is prevalent in the Black church. And so it's like, I can't fathom, her whole conversation about, and her whole sort of diatribe about, I like hypocrites. I can't stand hypocrites and blah, 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 blah. And it's just like, do you not hear yourself? And you're talking about being open and welcoming and accepting and showing none of those values in the way that you're behaving.
So it's so funny that you say that, because that was literally my thought when I first heard her. And it's like you said, you deal with it all the time. Like, I mean, I can say I deal with it all the time. That's why at my job we fight for diversity, equity, and inclusion.
We talked about this before. Yeah, we're both in DEI.
Yeah. So for me, when I hear people, and like you said, unfortunately for me, which is very interesting, it's usually a lot of Christians that consider themselves Christians that have such a hard time accepting others and want to call other individuals hypocrites.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I'm gonna just speak a little off for a second. This is probably my first year I actually read the Bible myself, right? And some of the stuff I'm reading, I'm like, well, y'all hypocrites too, because y'all do this, and that, and this, and that.
And that is the that's so interesting you said that.
Yeah.
Grew up in church. My grandfather's a pastor.
Yeah.
And I've read the Bible several times. Not to make this a competition.
No. Yeah.
But to your point, I was looking to Melinda embodying this character. It's just like, think about the speck in the moat, right? You're griping about a speck in somebody else's eye. And you have a whole beam in yours. And for folks who might not get that analogy, it's basically saying like, it's the pot calling the kettle. It's the pot calling the kettle.
Basically, yes.
Black.
But one thing I can say that All American Homecoming does, and All American, is that what they try to do is take an individual that you might see in the real world and bring them to life in the show.
Yeah.
Right? And so that's literally what her character was trying to portray.
Agreed.
Like how crazy you guys sound when you say this stuff.
Yeah.
Out loud. Like, do you hear yourself? Maybe if you see yourself on TV and you hear it back, maybe, just maybe,
something will shift
click.
a little bit. Exactly. Yeah. And I love, to your point, I love this conversation about, they have this conversation about faith and that folks can go to different churches, right?
Right.
And I just think that was an important thing. Obviously the way that it ended is that Melinda was just like, I just want faith to be more openly talked about on campus, and they ended up working together, which I was happy about, right? She joins her campaign, and it has ideas straight out the gate,
right?
Straight out the gate. And so I'm glad that they did bring it back together on this point about faith. But also, I don't know. Melinda bugs me anyway. So
yeah, she is not one of my favorites, and so I wasn't shocked at all by the conversation. But like you said, I did like that they, number one, because we just spoke on this, how they'll just let scenes drop, that they circled back and they allowed us to kind of see that whole process. Instead, we're like, well, where are the other candidates, right? We kind of saw that get addressed. So I'm okay with it.
And to show just how open and accepting Nate is as a character as well.
Yes. Very, very, very open.
And that's something consistent about her character.
Yes. And I love that they consistently show that. Like, consistently.
Yeah.
And she's funny.
Yes. Hilarious. We might got some problems after when we get further below, but for now.
Oh, good. Yeah. Oh, right.
We're getting back to it. We're getting back to it.
I try to forget that.
Us hyping her up before we get to midterms. I'll start with Damon's first. He fails his stats test. Cam gives him some advice about grief, and he's just like, oh, I don't want to use my grief. He ends up talking to Amara about it. The whole kinesthetic learner thing. They're always going to insert something, multiple episodes where it's just like, we're going to educate on college, right? Like, I'm a kinesthetic learner. Maybe I need to take the test a different way, which I think is excellent. Like, I think it's really good that they do that. And so ends up helping Nate actually with the polls, which is why, Melinda overheard, like, now, there is a ranked choice. So Nate is actually pretty close up to Nico. So Damon does that for his stats test, after talking to Amara, who, by the way, right, told him to be honest about his feelings. In general, right? It was about his dad's death and et cetera, et cetera. But anyway, turns out into a presentation and passes his class. But this whole journey that he was on basically makes him figure out that he did not kiss Simone out of grief. He did not kiss Simone out of grief. And that he just needed to figure out a way that worked for him to pass his test. Because he didn't fail his test out of grief either. Simultaneously, Simone has this story about midterms, and she has to resubmit her public health paper while she's trying to figure out this Yard Yak post about woman athlete, or a guy athlete coming out of a woman athlete's bedroom, which is Yard Yak. It's like the what's the Yik Yak? Yik Yak is the real life alternative to that. Yeah. And so she's trying to figure it out. She ends up confessing to her line sisters. Her line sisters end up confessing to her. Yeah. They have also messed up, which I love. Yeah. But it ends up not being about her. It ends up being about some girl, Zoe, who actually outed herself. She sounded super familiar, and please, audience, if you know who this girl sounded like, it sounds like another young black actress, and I just, for the life of me, could not remember who this girl sounded like, who played Zoe, who played this girl that you was talking about herself on, or said it's me on Yik Yak, or Yard Yak, so somebody tell me who that is if I don't figure it out for myself first. But she also tells Simone that she needed to be honest about what she wanted with the guy. And this also, like, prompted Simone about her feelings for Damon. Right. It's so interesting that they had these simultaneous things. They always do these parallel stories. Well, yeah, they always do these parallel stories with Simone and Damon. And this one is like, how much more parallel can you get? Yes. Like, midterm problems. Right. Like, they were the only two who had midterm problems. Obviously, it was just like Damon trying to figure out what was going on with him, Simone trying to figure out what was going on with this Yard Yak post, and also the public health thing. And here we go. Against the backdrop of this, that was the backdrop of it, but really what they were struggling to understand was their feelings about the kiss. So Damon talks to JR about it, Simone talks to Nate about it, and Nate a couple of times says, like, what about Thea? And Simone says, I'm not even friends with Thea, and if we're being real, she broke up with him.
And I want to throw out there, and I'm not going to name any names. Something very similar happened to me in high school, where this girl who was on my track team literally started dating my ex, who was doing the most, just trying to show up to my school. And I was like, hold up, what? Like, he knew, she knew, right? And then she wanted to talk to me like, oh, I wanted to talk to you about it first. Girl, bye. I don't even want it. like, so for me, like when Simone said that, I literally died laughing because
You're like, yeah,
yeah,
about Thea.
yeah, about like,
Yeah. And that's the thing, is that like it's and the weird thing is like I don't know if the show has defined it. Like I am totally comfortable with Simone saying like I'm not friends with Thea, I'm not friends with Thea. But it's like I also feel like they have her flip-flopping in a way. Like obviously she's saying the words out of her mouth that she's not friends with Thea, but I almost feel like it was a bit of a different story last season. You know what I mean? Like I don't feel like she said that last season. So obviously the things that happened, and Thea was mad out of pocket. I still don't think that she has given a proper apology to Simone for what she did.
right,
Number
right.
one. But I just like the show is teetering this line, and they have like Nate and JR saying like what JR said, what sometimes friends with Thea, and Nate being like, and I know you said I'm not worried about her, but I know that you are worried about her. So it's like they're not clearly defining what that status is between Simone and Thea, and that's bothers me.
Well, and so what's interesting, I think Nate had like told Simone, and I don't know verbatim, but basically was like, you want to tell the people who should know before they find out, right?
Yes,
Something, and
yes.
I thought that uh then Simone was going to tell Thea. Like I thought that was the person in which we were
Oh, I didn't even
talking
think about
about.
that.
But then next
Oh
thing
no,
I know, it was the
I
Line
knew she was going to
Sisters.
Damon. Yeah. Oh yeah,
Yeah,
true,
it was
true.
the
Yeah, yeah,
Line
yeah.
Sisters, and I'm like, oh, I was thinking Thea the whole time because at the end of the day, her and Thea in the previous episode had just talked, like prior to the kiss, talked about what she should do for Damon and so forth. Like you said, kind of teasing this friendship. And so I was like, oh, so she's going to tell Thea. No. Okay. All right. So,
And
what?
I'm so glad that you brought that up, because something that I've been saying, and I it feels like almost frustrating to be talking about this for the third week in a row. But something that's been on my mind lately is just like, to our greater point about picking up and dropping
Yeah.
stories. It's like we don't know. To your point, you didn't even know if she's referring to her line sisters. You think she's referring to Thea. A couple of episodes ago, when Lando was talking about, oh, it's because you can't trust your line sisters because about what happened with the tennis players, and everybody was like, we thought you were talking about LA. Like, we don't know where Simone's head is at, and I feel like that's a problem.
Yes.
Like,
Yes.
we can't tell who she wants to confide in from one moment to the next. And this is, and I think particularly it's been a issue in the last 3 episodes. Like I don't think this has been even a season long thing, but I don't know what it is about the past couple episodes in particular where they're just not making it abundantly clear,
Right. Right.
like who Simone wants to confide in, like who Simone's goal is. Her aim over the course of the past couple episodes have been her line sisters,
Right.
but also it was like at some point it was like her tennis team as well. So it's just like, when are these things changing, and like how can we mark those boundaries more clearly to understand Simone's character and like where she's going as a character, and then to believe these things when we like hear her. And again, I 1000% believe her where she's just like, I'm not friends with Thea, but then you have all these other people saying in the show,
You
but
guys
that's
are,
not true.
yeah. Yeah.
What?
Yeah. I like, and so for me, that's why the ending kind of like, in a way, irritated me because it seemed like both of them, who are usually very indecisive individuals, felt like they were very sure on this one thing. And now the friends have literally taken that away.
And let's talk about that, because they are indecisive individuals and they do a lot considering other people. What did Damon say to JR? He said like, I wanted to say like I'm doing the wrong thing, but I actually don't feel that way, right?
Right.
it was weird that it was like Nate of all
Yes,
people
of all
who
people.
put this into motion. Like and then Nate and JR of all two people, right? Like being co-conspirators for this. We can't let this happen to our chosen family.
Right.
We already lost family dinner. Y'all don't even go to family dinner anyway. Y'all ain't been to family dinner in ages.
Yes, that literally, like, I don't know. You know, I'm not a Simone and Damon lover. I love Lando. Her and Lando, but if we're gonna go there, we need to go there. I'm tired. I mean, I feel like we're back on the Olivia and Spencer train, and I can't take it.
Oh, not comparing it to Spolivia.
Yes, I am, and it's like, please just let them figure it out, right at this point. And so that like you said, just to have JR and Nate, like, come on, like, what? Why?
What was that? And it was so because it was, to your point, again, we've never seen Simone and Damon as a characters be more sure of anything, more sure of anything, I think, than we've seen them in the whole entire season. And the whole entire 2 seasons, right? They're always sort of going back and forth. They always just need an extra couple of minutes, right? To think it over. Mm-hmm. And then to see these people who have been with them from the beginning, before Thea was even a factor, right?
Exactly. Yes.
And for as much as many people called them out, especially JR and Nate and Keisha's not included, but like JR and Nate, because they were the ones that did this thing, both of y'all have told them at some point in time, oh, I know you think about Simone, right? Yeah. Oh, I know you think about Damon, right? So to see that and then unilaterally decide, we can't let this ruin our friendship because we're selfish, and we, even though we don't even, like, when's the last time y'all checked on Thea or like anybody else, right? Like, I don't know. You're just deciding at random to be like, oh, we can't let this happen. Right. You know? Yeah. They need to be there for us first and foremost. Like, what? I don't know. It was just weird.
And I'm so glad you brought that up. Like, I'm so glad you brought that up because that is literally key. Right? Like, if anybody was to go back and let's just say they wanted to binge All American Homecoming for like a week or whatever, they would literally see how they just swapped. Like, they literally swapped in a matter of a couple, well, it was more than a couple, but some episodes. And so it's just like, hold up, what? Why are you guys doing this to us?
Even in this episode, right? Mm-hmm. Nate was like, oh, this is juicy.
Yes.
Oh, Damon. Yes. Oh, it's Damon. And so...
Yes.
What when they realized it was real, I guess they were like, I gotta put a stop to this because I don't want them to. But I don't even think, I feel like it was such a false thing to say, I don't want to let them ruin the friendship, their friendship, Damon and Simone's. I think it was, again, more about the extended chosen family that they talk about, which again is, like, if we're being honest, sort of kind of fractured already. Like, just mentioned, right? Like, Nate and Keisha are hardly in the same episode anymore. They haven't had family dinners for a very long time. When they do have family dinners, it's, you know, it's not even the full entire group. And part of the person that they kept bringing up, Thea, is not even at family dinners majority of the time. So it's like, what? What are we doing? The people who are, like, there more often than not, Damon, JR, Simone, and then Keisha and Nate, sort of interchangeable. Last season they were there more together, and then everybody else is sort of just like, if they have an episode where they're invited, they have an episode where they're invited. Like, I don't know. It really bugged me as well because, again, once again, this has been from the very beginning. Yes. Like, and this is where something that I feel very strongly about is that there has always been something romantic
with them
underneath Simone and Damon's interactions. So they're acting like they've been friends for 20 years and this would ruin their friend. Like, what? No, they've known each other. This is the first year y'all at college. Like, they've known each other a semester and a half. Why are you plotting like the chosen family that you've had for 2 decades, right? Is at risk now. Like,
right.
No,
so you know what's funny? So there's 2 things. So I love that you said that at one point you said about how it's real now, right? Like, and so that's why I say what I think All American is kind of good at trying to show how some people may react to certain things, because it is funny, right? Like it was juicy, right? Like Nate said, it was juicy. So they like it when it's just juicy news that they can talk about, right? Like, oh, you got the hots for him. But where it might be, I actually love him, it turns into a whole nother conversation. And so,
and what did Damon say? He said, I think she's a 1, which
right.
is major. Yes, can't look over that.
And so speaking of that, so that was one thing. So like okay, how can I say this? With the JR statements, the way they cut them, one thing that he said I was okay with, but I just don't like the approach. And so by that, what I mean, I think he said something like, you just want to be careful with how you guys started, right? So when you look back at it, do you really want to have the memory that you might second guess it because you were going through whatever you may be going through, right? But I still don't like that they're plotting on not having them together, right? I think that that's good advice, right? I know, and I'm telling like all my business today, but I'm trying to relate it. I'm trying to relate it to how I think All American does with people. My best friend got killed in 11th grade. And I had broke up with a guy, but then we ended up getting back together because of that grieving period and him being kind of like how Simone was for Damon. And so we were in a good relationship for a very long time, right? But when I always go back now and look at it, that's where it began, right? It's tied now to a grieving moment. And so that for me is why that part stuck out. But other than that, I don't like the plotting, especially as a fan of, like, I love the show, right? It's frustrating as it is to watch it. I do love the show.
Same.
But to like keep teasing us now, all right, I had enough.
No, you said I'm done with the writer.
Yeah.
No, I think my big thing is, that's life. And I feel like that's almost what the writers are trying to point out with this story, is that it wasn't Simone and Damon really pushing this, that it was really JR and Nate plotting to push this. But to that point about the whole grief conversation is sometimes that is life, right? Like, to your point, and just because you use yourself as an example, that was your life that you went through, and sometimes that is the case, and you can't, timing isn't always perfect, and I think that's been Simone and Damon's whole thing, is that their timing isn't perfect, and I don't think their timing ever will be perfect, and I think that was them realizing it, but then letting JR and Nate talk them out of that. And you could tell that neither of them, like, when they had that conversation at the end, where it's just like, oh, it's just because I was comforting you, they both wanted the other to be like, no, actually, this is ridiculous, now we getting together. And you saw both of their disappointment when none of that happened. It's just like, because y'all just heard the people say be honest, and now y'all not being honest. Like,
All American, I'm gonna have one suggestion, because I'm starting to blame you. You guys are showing that people should not trust and listen to their friends, and we do not want that to be the storyline. People should still listen to their friends who have good advice.
Maybe Keisha will come back and talk some sense.
Because after this episode, I tell my best friend.
Cam isn't a hater. Cam isn't a blocker.
Cam is not. And I love how they have made his character evolve. But he's not a hater and not a blocker. He would have been pushing for them to...
Yeah. He would have been like, oh, it took y'all long enough?
Exactly, yeah.
So, yeah. So that's...
The episode.
That's the episode. Thanks for listening. Thanks for listening to this portion, and stay tuned for our predictions.